So, Jamie, you were just interviewed by a Dutch media outlet, and they were asking you about the White House Instagram. And I know that there's more that needs to be said that wasn't all said on that program. So, let's chat about it.
Yeah, thank you. Out of the blue, RTL News, the Dutch news agency, it's the national news agency for the Netherlands, gave me a call and said, "Hey, we're doing a story about the White House, official White House Instagram." And I said, "Okay, it's great." And they said, "We want your comments on it because you're the person that's been studying some of the memes that are coming from the administration." And I said, "Memes? I don't even know. Like, I know they post memes, but I'm like not thinking about the memes in general." And so then I went to the Instagram page. I was like, "Oh, this is an aggressive account." And so my first thought was, okay, what they're looking for, because this is a Dutch news agency, is to explain to Europeans, or at least Northern Europeans, what it means to use official messaging with memes. Like, what does that mean? And then my assumption then becomes, I guess no one else on earth is doing this. so so I had to do a little bit of research to figure out why this is important. But then it only took me a short amount of time to basically notice that it isn't just memes that the official White House page is posting, but they're actually not even up to date memes, or vice versa. They're AI slop. So they're not your typical, like, it's not a meme page where somebody's making like cool edits on a picture and they're like telling cool stories with something that like kind of makes you think a little bit harder. It's actually just memes that are being recycled from fan accounts or uplifted from fan accounts. But the odd part here, of course, the thing that makes it a story and necessary to like record and have me talk about it in Times Square, which was fascinating, is the fact that this is official messaging. And one thing I think we forget, because it's Instagram, is that Instagram, like other social media, has official messaging channels, people who have to talk to us from an important standpoint and inform us or tell us about policies and how they're distributed to the audience. And in the case of mimetic storytelling, it's not just like in academic speak, reductionist. It takes a big message and makes it tiny and shareable and remixable, but it is actually the endpoint. So it's like they're basically posting it as official messaging. So I think what I found fascinating about the story was the Dutch in particular, if you know like about the Dutch and stuff, are an agnostic people. Like, they're very much open minded. They're very clear to that the world is strange. People are different. We should tell stories about things that are different. But in this case, they were very much like fair. You could tell they were fairly curious and somewhat disturbed by the content on it, especially the content that was more dangerous. And so the story that I told in Times Square was about the posts that really were meant to um, show or celebrate harms on these platforms. And I would like to talk to you about how this happened, like a little bit of an evolution of Instagram, how it got to this point, and how it's allowed to be like this. But I think the second part of this is like how much what it actually means when an administration like the official one does this, because it's hard for news agencies in particular, aside from the Dutch, to explain this in a sober, objective way. Because when it comes from an official channel like the White House, you have to assume it's official, even if it seems silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right as you're talking, the things I'm thinking about were all the posts that the White House channel did during the government shutdown, which, if it came from a channel that was not the official White House channel, would have been absolutely hilarious. But several times I found myself going like, "Oh, like that's really kind of funny." And then I realized, "Oh no, the White House is posting this?"
Yeah. Yeah. There is a sense of officialness. Let's talk about how we met no official messaging. So that's the first thing I thought of was when you're in a world with world leaders around the planet, and each of them come to their world leadership through in mostly democratic processes, or in some cases authoritarian measures, and sometimes a mix of both. Um, you judge them based on the fact that they are in charge, regardless of what it is. So this is what I when I was doing the pre-interview with the producers at the Dutch news agency. Um, One of the things I brought up was how when you're like at the BBC and you listen to somebody in the administration blatantly lie or spit extreme propaganda, you don't say it. You can't say this is, you can't like interject and be like, well, this is to the audience. You can't say to them and say, hey, listen, what you just heard is propaganda or a lie. You can't, because it would destroy the idea of structure, the structure of democracy or the structure of officialness. When somebody is the president, they are in charge. When somebody has a speaker, a spokesperson, they are the spokesperson for that president. So therefore is official. Regardless of what you may hear, it still is that. And that is to keep like basically the idea that this governments even exist, or even international diplomacy continues to exist. And so you have to do this because it's more for the safety of like the environment of the planet, because the opposite is chaos. And like no matter how much chaos you might be enduring today, you can't to collapse that structure, to be responsible for the collapse of that structure, would be far more damaging than just upholding it and being like, well, this is how democracy works. Sometimes it's weird, sometimes it isn't.
Uh, ow. Like,
Yeah.
uh, because I don't know, the news right now, right, is very much seems like democracy on the edge of collapse. I can't even engage
Yeah.
with news outlets. So I was glad you mentioned the BBC because um, it's a little more removed from the situation. Like, it's very hard to trust any American news outlets because I know who they're owned by.
Right, right. Yeah, typically I would turn to the BBC. Like when we don't have, I've been a cord cutter now for over 10 years, so we don't really have cable. During the holidays, we sign for YouTube TV. So occasionally now I'm like, oh, I get to watch news. like, and YouTube TV has the quad box. Do you use that?
Yes,
Like,
I use it all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. And I like it. I actually like it's a little overstimulating, but the get to watch four news channels simultaneously, and like I like picking different ones so I could see what's the top coverage. And so I usually put BBC as my sound, and then I could see the other ones airing it. And so you kind of expect something like the BBC to be more like Reuters or AP, a little bit more objective. But even then, it's still, you remember, it is the British Broadcasting Company, so it is they are still broadcasting to a country and still telling a story. So there is a level of realism that anybody who interacts with the news must understand. Like that, this is a problem with media literacy too, which is to read the media properly, you have to do more work than they're doing, because they're telling you the story you need to hear, not the story you should be hearing. And in the US, it's tougher, like you just mentioned, because you're right. Like in the US, our corporate media is literally corporate media. Like it's not like corporately owned and like, oh, it's a corporation broadcasting system where it's like shareholder express. No, no, it's like a corporation, it's basically business media. And so when you think about that, you're like, okay, well, there's a slant, there's a message, there's a bias, there's a editorial directive to what can be told and what can't be. And so you kind of expect the BBC to at least be a little bit more like that. So I was actually a little happy about the Dutch agency, because the Dutch, well, of course, they have the same media situations. They're just a bit more like blunt about it. They're just like, well, this is what you're seeing. Sorry. So, just like all the news organizations, they cannot say that out loud. And that's what commentators for, or academics. So they interview people so you get their perspective, because they can't take a stand, but they could ask somebody else to take the stand. My research for 18 years has been in this realm. So it's like this is like what I diagnose and understand. And obviously within the last decade, like it's turned grossly more towards what I would consider extremism, although not extremism in the sense that most people would consider it. What I mean by extremism is that extremism is a paradox. You can't Nothing can be extreme, because once it becomes extreme, it becomes normalized. So then it has to become more extreme. So this applies to algorithms, this becomes information, this becomes people. You normalize anything that's towards the borderlands of your reality, and that's normal. You just accept it. So then it stretches. So it keeps on going. So then when we're dealing with extremism, you kind of have to put in like the center. You have to be like, where, so we have to agree on something. We have to agree that there's like a real something to say, this is what real is, and everything else is outside of those boundaries of norms. And so The one thing that shocked me, I think the one thing that shocked me about the idea of telling this story was a lot of what I saw on the White House official channel did not seem extreme to me because of the nature of other material that I digested on a normal basis. I was like, oh, this is pretty tame. But then thinking, but I don't think the White House has ever done memes with Frank Sinatra singing Merry Christmas and then talking about sending people to deportation camps. I was like, that's fairly new. And so I'm a person that doesn't like using the word unprecedented because history rhymes, but this is fairly unprecedented.
Often, like, I find myself looking at the White House account and questioning if things that are real, not a meme, are actually AI generated.
I have a very strong take on AI aesthetics. My
I've never looked at the president's hands more closely than in a video where he seems to be sitting in the Oval Office and delivering a message very officially, but there's something that's not right about it, and I can't figure out what it is.
So there is a lot right now, unfortunately. There's a fair amount of academic research on AI aesthetics, especially the aesthetics of generative AI. And its shininess, its surreal, uncanny valley space where if you do the resolution right and you use the right face tuner on any app, you're getting a similar effect. But AI is a complete fabrication, whereas like face tuning is one part, or like skin tuning or whatever. So when you're looking at AI material, the reason why people mostly on the far right would lean into it further than anybody else is because it can generate a reality that doesn't exist at all in our reality. And what I mean by that is like, how do I put this? Beyond the idea of the misogyny built into AI, where it undresses women or it creates it enhances the details of women a little bit more aggressively than men. It also does something where it euthorizes, if that's a word. It turns older people youthful. It changes the way that their skin tone looks, but it also allows them to change their expressions. And so, one of the interesting parts of the aesthetics of AI is that it can make somebody look more upset. It can make somebody look like they're in pain. It can make somebody look like they're laughing, and everything's a little slightly more grotesque. And so, that grotesquerie that's inside of this like aesthetic is something that like enhances a reality of grotesqueness to its actual reality, which is like kind of interesting when you think about it, because AI can imitate reality because it actually expresses what they're thinking and not what reality is.
That's upsetting.
It is upsetting, and that's why I'm not a big user of it because of that action. That's like it can do things that are like real. So it's kind of like think of AI this way, or at least the White House's or anybody use of AI in the terms of like manipulation AI. It is you're actually watching what imagination looks like on reality, whereas reality itself isn't as exciting without that. So a lot of and it's not. There's nothing wrong with you to think that the White House is posting AI because um, he posted the video of him and Ronaldo, which
Yes.
is totally AI up until like the last 2 seconds, and it's like not even good AI. So he like gets up and like does a lot of like soccer kicks, but like you could clearly tell that's not Donald Trump in the image. Like it's just an AI guy. Like, and then all of a sudden it snaps to reality where they're standing next to each other because that much movement for him would be like phenomenal to see just in general. But like that's obviously not even your basic soccer player can kick a ball around with Ronaldo, So that is that was that I found fascinating. So it's like the normalization of like that unreality in those things is strange enough. But I think what I talked about with the post is the not just the AI images of like muscular Trump or like the God Emperor Trump from the mid 2000s, but the stuff that was like specifically designated as like mean or performatively harmful to the audience. What I mean by this is like back to the official messaging part. If you're the official messenger, you're telling the public official messaging, and you are expressing these types of messages, you are giving permission to everyone who's under you that this is okay to do. This is not only okay to produce, but it is okay to participate in. And why would you say it isn't? The top guy says it is. Like, this is it. There's only one person in the entire United States that is immune, that cannot do libel lawsuits. A single person cannot sue somebody for libel or character defamation, and that is the president of the United States. And that's because defamation is about the loss of power. And when you're the top power, there's no way you could lose it. And so when you're the top power, you're also the top messenger of information.
You said something, and it's in the AI vein. And I have two competing thoughts that are happening at the same time. One is, it's becoming clearer and clearer to me that someone younger is in charge of the social media. And if that's true, which I'm assuming it is, there's no reason for me to assume that it's not at this point. They're doing a really good job. And if this was not the White House, the brand, like if this were a brand, if this were Coca-Cola or whoever, it would be absolutely incredible. Marketers would be studying it for use of AI. However, at the same time, do you think that there are an increased amount of these obviously unrealistic videos that Trump is putting out there? Obviously, he's approving it. We know how much he cares about his image. You can see it by the fake tan and the messed up hair. But it reminds me of dealing with the older family members I have in my life that are obsessed with the AI videos, whether that's portraying reality in the way they find amusing or they can't quite distinguish or was how they wish it was. Like, what do you think about? Like, is it a younger audience manipulating an older audience? Or is it an older person in power distributing how he wants to be seen?
That is amazingly hard to think about. There's two ways of thinking about it. One is you might have this young 20-somethings groiper far right poster from the internet who has figured out the model of messaging that fits into this administration and is just amazing at it. Because in terms of marketing, you're right. Like, this is what I mentioned in the piece is like, they know more than anything, the White House official account knows how to make a successful post. They are successful. This is, if you want to know how to do a case study on successful media marketing, take a look at this channel. Because what people think of as success isn't what they're doing. But our mind, when we think about success, we think about like making the world a better place, seeing our metrics go up, seeing more followers, seeing people smile and engage positively. That's your success, but that's not success on social media. Success on social media is engagement and response and algorithmic exploitation. So when they post something and let's say the majority of the people hate it, but they respond by engaging with it and talking to it and being angry at it, it's possibly more successful than it was meant the other way. And so this is a case study of what success is in terms of this. So you could look at this and be like, wow, this is a borderline genius poster that has a way of manipulating the public because they're so fluent in internet that they just know how to speak internet. Or you could look at it as like, this is what an adult old man just likes to look at. And just, so because the audience for generative AI is the elderly and babies, Gen Alpha, so you get like the borderline extremes of like who likes to look at slop. You do get like the late millennials who enjoy like Bigfoot talking about something, but it's like you really get you get the majority of like the AI, truly AI content, or like aggressively fake content in the places where people like enjoying media that fits their narrative rather than media that they have to fit into their narrative. But I don't know. I can only be speculative. There's a pretty big, I was asked this a lot during the first administration. I got a lot of questions and a lot of interviews when you and I worked together about this question, because it was about who's making these posts. Like, and he had a team. He had like a bunch of like mid-millennial, like creators doing it. And today I would say that it could be either. The team could, I would, if I were to speculate, it's people who like were raised, probably born in either the early 2000s or late 90s, and they were raised in the worlds of 4chan, and they just know how to make engagement bait. And their engagement bait is, I don't like saying this, but it's like near perfect. Like it is like what, if you're going to manipulate a social media feed, this is what you do.
Yeah. It's what I tell the people in my life that get, you can tell when it's happening to someone that they spend too much time online and they get that bitter angriness just constantly about anything. It doesn't matter what side they're on. And my number one thing is that feed is exactly what you hover over. So stop hovering, clear your algorithm out. Like all of this is based on what you react to, and you are more likely to react to something that makes you incredibly angry than
Yeah.
something that is inherently positive. I love looking at puppy videos all day. Do I engage with them? Do I put low comments on there? Absolutely not. But people were like, propaganda to me is inherently making someone mad and pissing someone off. And I'm like, just stop. Like, just you're doing exactly what it wants you to do. And you're not making the world any better by responding to some random who's probably a bot online. Like, it feeds that beast. So if you want to stop it, cut it off.
Hmm.
Um,
The little heart is the least effective part of social media. Yeah.
well, yeah. But it's
Yeah.
the part to take a marketing view of this, and I work with influencers, that little heart is the most important thing to them.
Hmm.
And those
Hmm.
comments are the most hurtful. But no one's willing, like my POV of it as the marketer are saves and shares. It's
Hmm.
not either
Yep.
one of those.
That's right. That's 100% right. Save shares. Yeah, that arrow pointing to the upper right or the save, that tells you people are actually want the video, and they want. What's interesting? Okay, so the case goes the same here too, which is like in marketing, you want you don't want to be alone with the media. Like that's the if you go back to the original viral recipe, like pre-influencer content or pre my hyper nicheification of the internet. When you go to like when there was like a main character, like a hyper viral person, like Double Rainbow or Chewbacca Mom or like whatever, like you experience it and you can't be alone with it. You must show somebody else. You have to. And it's a compulsion. Therefore, that's the highest value. Like you are using social media as a social product. Liking it is nice for the creator because it proves to the creator that people are there. It means that there's an audience that exists, which is fine. That's great. But in terms of like making sure that your material is seen or like somebody feels something from it, you really want it to end up in a place where they could return to it, which means that you get a return audience, a long tail. And then you could also get like the hate view, like the hate enjoyment, which is like sharing it because you want somebody else to be angry because you can't be alone with this anger. And then it's like you're not actually pushing the needle one way or another, but you are changing the way their content is seen by other people, which
Mm.
is a really, I think it's an underserved part of social media because people don't want to know that. Like they want to believe in a better thing, but it's like you're talking about machines and math. You're not talking about people. You're talking about how marketing works. And it's like, I love the idea of like having idealism, but it's just not realistic.
I was having a conversation with my husband last night. He's a retired police officer, and he was trying to find a way to explain to police departments that like the way they run press conferences is where a lot of these issues are happening. And if they would just hire someone with a ton of experience in it to deliver the press conference, that it would go better. And he was so idealistic about it. And that's amazing and it's beautiful. And he's 100% right. However, that's never going to happen because people are never going to give up the platform, no matter how small, no matter how big.
That's right. Yeah. So there's a bit of history from this. This is fascinating that you brought that up. The platform itself is part of the story. If you're going to work on a platform, first off, from experience, it's really, really hard to write books about this, to write papers, because like Wikipedia, where the data changes in the topic, so do platforms. Like where like just the Ellison ownership of TikTok has already changed the algorithm. It's already happened. It's happened already in real time. So that means all my previous writing gone. Just it's awful. Um, there was a moment. It's either 2017 or 2018. There's a paper that I consistently return to over and over again, or an article. It was in the Atlantic and it was by Taylor Lorenz. Taylor is one of the like OG internet culture reporters. And so in 2017 or 18, she was working for the Atlantic or maybe freelance. And she wrote this essay called Hate Finds a New Home on Instagram. And she talked about the fact that Instagram, up until this maybe was why why we're yearning for 2016, because it was that was the period just before this. Around 2017, when Trump took office, the algorithms obviously shifted. The audience is now in charge. So, whatever was the audience in the Obama Hope years and mid millennial libertarian, neoliberal optimism was shifting more towards like this very much of anger driven, algorithmic exploitation of punching into emotions that move things. So anger is a great motivator. It always works. Um, so then where do you fill that gap of anger as a motivator? And you get like these influencers, these new influencers. And she was writing specifically about like DC Drano or the typical liberal, who were going onto Instagram to basically create memes. They were meme generators, and they would take a very small snippet, selective part of the news, cut it out, and then direct it towards a propagandistic audience. And it was not permission because these are user generated content. This wasn't coming from the top level, but it was engagement. They were creating like such a phenomenal engagement model that they were gaining followers by the thousands every single day. And so what Taylor critiques is that shouldn't the platform have some sort of safety switch? But no, of course not, because platforms are expression zones that aren't dictated by the First Amendment or just amendments in general. As an expression zone, it's what makes the most expression, not what is right, and who makes the decision of what is right. So there's still content moderation and there's still trust and safety teams that keep the extreme harms out. Like there are tens of thousands of people right now that allow you to use the internet as safe as possible because you don't see CSAM material, extreme gore in most cases. Occasionally it slips through. Yeah.
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk's an aberration, as is Alex Preddy. It's like there are aberrations where you do see a snuff film. Like it becomes so viral so quick it can't be contained. There's a story that goes all the way back to it's 15 years ago now. 15 years ago, 2000 and more than 15 years. In 2009, a young protester in Iran during the Green Revolution was shot on camera, and she bleeds out to death live on camera. And it was a horrific death. She bleeds out of her eyes and ears. Like, it was horrific. There was a huge discussion of whether or not that should be seen. And this is where the turning point was, because they decided this is newsworthy and necessary and motivating. And they left it online. You could still see it today. And it changed the way that we have discussions about what stays on the internet, what is safe, what is harms. And so when we're occasionally shocked by it, because Kirk's death was so aggressively horrific that you're like, well, how are we supposed to even deal with that? And it's like, well, it must be worthy enough to repeat. But as time changes, we also change how we see or react to like horrific material. And so that's again why I was like not as shocked by the White House's talks, because I'm like, oh, this is like mid-level posting. It's like in the world of posting right now, this is like middle. It's like there's many worse things. And in 2017, that those accounts, when they originally were private, because Instagram would block them if they started posting hate content publicly, Instagram would be like, nope, or you get a shock warning or you get like a flag. And then all of a sudden they realize, wait, what if we didn't keep them private? And then they saw usership go up. They saw engagement go up. So like, oh, this is the way they saw it, was like an increase of an audience. And so again, even if you're not an Instagram user, you're probably coming across official White House Instagram posts being reposted or replayed somewhere else. And that helps the platform. That helps the platform increase. And there's a recent article about the fact that Instagram is so filled with bots and so filled with AI that they kind of have to prove that people still exist there. So the more the White House account does this, the more likely it is that real people engage with a platform that they traditionally might not have liked. Um, and now they're there. And so it is like, this is, you're looking at business. You're really, and it's like, I hate to downplay it like that, but you're really looking at the business of marketing, especially when you have to market politics in a very different world than we're very used to. And that is fascinating to me.
I'm glad you said that because I'm having another one of those like thoughts that I'm sure that, is going to take us down a rabbit hole. But since we can't market politics like we used to, right? Let's take it from the view of, the CNNs and the Fox Newses have obviously diverted our audience, our identity as people, how we consume news. But no one I know actually watches those channels unless they're much older than us. We consume our news online. Do you think that the Trump administration is using these internet memes as a way of deflecting and being like, obviously, this isn't serious? Like, because I have a theory about how the Trump administration functions. Um, and I always believe that he causes the most nonsensical, newsworthy drama when he needs everybody to focus on something else. And then that's when I'm like, what aren't we looking at? And then that's my number one indicator that maybe something else is going on. When the news blew up about his relationship with Elon, who they were in love with each other, and that whole thing happened, I was like, I don't care about that.
Right.
What aren't we talking about that must be going on somewhere else? Because why else would you lob a grenade that ridiculous?
Right.
But I think these memes are ridiculous. So is it
Oh,
distraction?
interesting. Okay. There is a this is a great point you bringing up, which is, first off, this comes downstream of who was his first chief of staff in the first administration, who came up with this model called "flood the zone with shit," and it was basically to overwhelm the audience so they could not see the stories that they were supposed to see. They were only hearing the stories that were coming at them. The overwhelming nature was designed specifically to obfuscate or distract people from what was going on underneath the scenes. And obviously, we found that out to be too true. The first administration is obviously a bit different than the second administration, where there was adults in the room, and now there's everybody's kind of sycophantic. But I think what you're saying, which is fascinating, is you're actually saying shit posting by government, because shit posting originally is designed to derail conversations. So if you're in a thread and you're having like this long form, the thing about online media is that it's unless you're live streaming, it's all takes place in like a radio, like a walkie talkie. You leave a message, get a message, leave a message, get a message. It's like, it's kind of like this relay system. And so the relay system, because it takes time, sort of like texting, like somebody could come in, and maybe this happens in group chats too. Somebody like just doesn't feel comfortable with the discussion. And so they shit post in it. They basically create a derailing conversation. They derail the conversation and distracts people enough that they can't think about it. I never really thought about the idea that the memes themselves in these pages are a macro shit post. Like it's big enough that it derails it so far that you can't look backward, because it becomes the object rather than typically a shit post you get back on your conversation. But here it's like it becomes like a speed bump that's so big you can't get over it. It's like it just, you kind of have to figure out, do I go around it? Do I wait it out? Do I wait for a plow? Like, so that's a really good point, which is these memes aren't memes in their traditional sense, which are tiny shareable bits of information, but rather complete um, story changers. It's like you could see the move. So honestly, like, what you just said is like makes me feel very strange, to be honest, like as somebody who studied this, because like, have memes reached their moment where they're official communication in that way, like, because they act in a way that maybe we didn't expect them to, because now they're doing that. But it's like, maybe that's the end point of what memes do, is that they eventually become the most powerful means of communication, which is like not what they're supposed to do.
Right? I mean, it makes me remember when I remember one of the first times I was like, the White House is posting this. was Trump announcing that he was gonna revamp the West Bank or something and make it. Do you remember that? And the amount, like the divide that happened of people that took it seriously and the people that were like, this is obviously not serious. And it was very dividing. And but like
I
AI,
think
so, but obviously wasn't like, it was a distraction.
there's a piece of truth in every meme, though, because memes are emotional objects. And so when somebody uses a meme, they are sharing. Well, here's what I like about memes. Here's what whenever I see a meme or like talk about memes, I always remind people they are a positive piece of media, regardless of what you think. And it's because it allows you to know that someone else out there feels the way you feel. And it
Mm,
is very humanistic in that sense. Like how if you share a meme that is so niche, something that like only you think you could connect with, and somebody else likes it, you're like, oh, I'm not alone. This
mm.
is somebody else. Like somebody else shares this very, very niche thing. And so when he posts that, underneath it is it's kind of like a here's another marketing tip is like memes can act as a way of feeling out the audience. You could kind of get it's like A/B testing it without A/B testing it. You don't have to try it. You could kind of put the sensors out there and see how people react to it. And if they react well, you'd be like, oh, we'll go with it. And if they don't, well, now we know. So the meme allows, and this is something I've been working on for now a decade, which is the media literacy of just joking or irony. Like, how do you do a media literacy of just joking? Because that's an easy out. So that's like I think this administration has that as their underlying thread, which is like if shit goes sideways, they just go, well, "We're just joking, it's just a meme." Just so that you're taking this. That's like that very subtle nihilistic post that people do. You're taking this too seriously, they'll say, and it's like so. Then you have to ask yourself, did you take the bait and you're not taking it seriously enough, or am I taking it too seriously? So that's like a weird global gaslighting, I guess. But it is a way of like really downplaying the severity or the seriousness of any given issue. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, and I don't know how to put into words quite yet. This is I really and like I said at the beginning of this at the top, which is that I didn't really pay too much attention to the White House's page until RTL News called me, and I was very happy they wanted to talk to me about it. But I also was like, oddly, like I guess maybe I became cynical towards the idea of it because I was like, well, there's no way anybody takes this seriously. And then I forget it's the official page. Yeah, people are taking it seriously, and some people don't have the media literacy or the skepticism necessary to see it as a joke. Consumers in general are not that smart, So it's not like they're dumb. I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm just saying they're not as smart to be able to detect the irony or just joking in it, and they take it as real.
I mean, I do the public. This is a joke. I believe it's a Ron White joke that's like, the public is not as smart as, because it's a group of people. A person is smart, the public is not. And that, like, I just watched the Joe Rogan episode with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck talk about how they renegotiated their contracts with Netflix and they did this big, awesome thing. It's very interesting what they did. But the number one thing I took away was Netflix told them, here, here, and here in your script, people are going to zone out. You need to repeat the plot because people are on their phones. You have to have a big fight scene in the front and a big fight scene at the end. It's no longer you save your fight scene for the end. So the fact that Netflix knows you have to repeat your main point over and over and over again signals to the people that maybe know the American public better than any other media platform right now. They're not very smart.
Or they're making them like that. Like, is it
Oh no.
it's the question of advertising. Does advertising reflect the world or make the world? Like it's an unknown. That's not an answer. There's no answer. I'm just saying like that it acts in that same way, which is this storytelling shaping the world or is it reflecting the world? Like I don't know. That's an I don't know. But that's a fascinating question to like consider in your mind. As a consumer, you should just have that in your mind at the same time, which is the knowledge that it could be both.
Yeah. Well, this conversation didn't make me feel any better.
I liked having it though. So this is a conversation that has to keep going until there's a language for people to grasp in a very mature way, because I think we are at a mature point in history, and I think there's the stakes are a bit higher than they've ever been, and so I think it's time for us to be concerned and be curious.